Hello, this is Mr. Asserson again. Here we are for another screencast about sensation and perception. This is going to be part two. There are a total of 3 parts, so you might want to check out the other ones as well. In part two, what are we going to look at? Well, this slide tells us right here. Let's pull it up. What are the basic processes and anatomical structures for each of the senses? In elementary school, you learned that there are 5 senses. We're going to add 2 more, vestibular and kinesthesis, and we're going to also talk about pain as well. Pain is part of the sense of touch, but we're going to talk about it a little more in depth. So let's get started. Here we go. We're going to start with the idea of transduction. All of the senses, as we're gathering information from our environment, it's sound waves, it's light waves, it's chemicals on our tongue and in our nose. We have to change all those types of energy into an electrical impulse that goes to our brain, and we get that information through the electrical impulse. So the process of transforming it from the stimulus energy to a neural impulse is called transduction. And there's part of our body for each sense that does the transduction. So in the eye, the light comes in the lens, it hits the back of the eye. The back of the eye is called the retina. That's where the rods and cones are, and that's what lets us see. The information from the retina goes out the optic nerve, and that goes to the brain, to the visual cortex, and that's how we see. That's how we perceive. When it gets to the brain, it's the perception. The getting the information onto the retina and doing the transduction, that's the sensation. Once it gets to the brain, it's the perception part. So a couple things about this. We have a blind spot where the optic nerve leaves the eye. There are no rods and cones right there. So that's our blind spot. We did the activity in class, which demonstrated that. Also, we should know the rods and cones. The cones see color, the rods see black and white. And when lights are dimmed, the cones don't work very well, so that's why everything turns kind of gray and black. Also, our peripheral vision is mostly uses our rods. So in our very peripheral vision, things tend to be more gray than vibrant colors. Here's another look at the retina. Here's the definition: the light-sensitive inner surface of the eye, containing receptor rods and cones that process visual information. Once it comes in the eyes, this picture shows it going down the optic nerves to the visual cortex in the back of the brain. Okay, let's talk about the ear. Lots of parts to the ear. For the AP Psych test, for the ear and the eye and all of the senses, there's going to be like a couple of key parts we need to know. We don't need to know every single part. So it's the retina you need to know mostly in the eye. In the ear, the main part we need to know is called the cochlea, which is this semicircular area back here. Sound waves come in, they vibrate the eardrum. These bones move a little bit. But inside the cochlea is where where the transduction occurs, and then that information is sent out the auditory nerve to the brain. So what does that look like? This looks inside the cochlea. It's a swirl like this. There's fluid in there. There's hairs in the fluid, and when the fluid moves, the hairs kind of float back and forth in it, and that movement creates the electrical impulse that is then sent down the auditory nerve. And it goes to the auditory cortex and the temporal lobe. I don't know if you remember the brain unit, the temporal lobe. Tempo is sound, so that's the part that processes sound. Taste, we have taste buds. And something important to know about taste is that there are 5 main things that we taste: sweet, sour, salty, bitter, and something called umami, which is like the savory taste of chicken, like a roasted chicken. So those are the 5 main tastes that we taste. However, some people dispute that there are only 5 tastes and think that there are hundreds of tastes that we taste, like curry and cinnamon and all the spices and flavors. So there's a map of approximately how tastes are sensed on the tongue. Okay, with our sense of smell, by the way, taste and smell are known as the chemical senses because it's chemicals landing in your nose, chemicals landing on your tongue, and that's why they're called the chemical senses. So the sense of smell is called our sense of olfaction, our olfactory membrane in our nose. So in our nose, there's the olfactory membrane. Information goes to the olfactory bulb. It goes down the olfactory nerve, and then it goes to the brain where it's processed. We can smell thousands of things. So there's not like 5 smells that make up a combination that are all of our smells. It's like we smell hundreds of things. Here's a close-up picture of what's going on. The smell is going into the olfactory bulb, and the olfactory cortex is right here. Taste comes in through the thalamus. This is the gustatory nerve or the taste nerve. And taste and smell affect each other a lot. When you're eating something and it tastes good, you're probably smelling how good it smells, and that's as much a part of the taste as the actual taste. So it goes to the olfactory cortex. The taste bud goes to the gustatory nerve, to the thalamus, to the gustatory cortex. So gustatory is about taste, olfactory is smell. So they are closely processed, close to each other. Memories together about smell and taste are very powerful, especially smell. Like you can think of going to your grandmother's house and you smelled the apple pie cooking or something, and you have that vivid image of going to your grandmother's house. My grandmother's house was always fudge, like at Christmas time. Okay, we're just powering through these. Sense of touch is a mix of 4 distinct things: pressure, warmth, cold, and pain. Those are the things that we feel with our sense of touch. Pain tells us that something in our body has gone wrong, so it's a very useful thing to know. There is a rare disease where people don't feel pain, and you think, oh, that'd be nice. But actually, it's a major problem for those people, because if you get a cut on your leg or your foot or something and you don't see it and you don't feel it, you might just be bleeding and bleeding and bleeding, and you might get an infection and you might not know what's going on. So feeling pain is actually important. It's a signal to us that something's wrong, and then we can take action to correct that. There's also body position and movement. By the way, pain goes up to the spinal cord, then to the thalamus and the cerebral cortex. And our sense of touch goes through our sensory neurons into our parietal lobe. Okay, 2 other senses that you didn't learn about in first grade. One of them is called kinesthesis. The other is called vestibular. I don't know, maybe if they renamed these and made them easier words, elementary school kids would know them. Kinesthesis is when we know where our body parts are, like you know where your hands and legs and feet are. You can feel them in space. That's because we have sensory neurons in our joints, and those sensory neurons tell us what's going on in that joint, and we can tell where our body is. With kinesthesis, or with vestibular, it's our sense of where our body is as a whole. Are we leaning over? Are we lying down? Are we upright? Are we upside down? And there's stuff in our ear that tells us that. And there's a fluid in there. And so when you spin around, when you were a little kid and you made yourself dizzy by spinning around, what's happening is you're getting that fluid in your vestibular sense to move real fast. And then you stop spinning, and that fluid is still moving, and that's what makes you dizzy. Okay, we're just powering through these things. Remember, if you have any questions, you can always check with me in class. That is the end of part 2. So just let me know if you have any questions in class.